Oh, that's
Looks like she might have been able to finally start it. Way to go, Karen.
yeah. Okay. I think we were having some server problems at DFR. So apparently all the fun across the street at the legislature has come and infected our system and made everything break. So that's exciting. I have completely lost my train of thought now. Give me 1 sec. Okay, so I had all of my stuff open on this computer, and then I had the Teams running on the conference room computer. And then I thought, okay, if I switch to this computer, but so now I have all my files open on here, but also the screen is here, so that's not helpful. Anyway, so give me 1 sec to see if I can actually get my files on
Let me know if
the
you want
other
me to screen share.
for myself for my reference, and then I can actually start rolling. Okay, since we do have the recording running, I'll start talking. So this is our third and hopefully final meeting of this group to discuss amendments to our rules implementing House Bill 4149 from this year, as well as making other technical updates. I do apologize for not being able to get materials out to y'all before today. I definitely had the intention of doing so, but the scheduling a rack the same week as Ledge Days turned out to not be an excellent idea for myself. But kind of what we're working around is timeline issues in terms of actually getting out the temp rule and trying to finalize the language here. And so it wasn't necessarily feasible to have it next week either. So kind of, I have a truncated agenda plan, which is I did end up making a few changes to the draft rule, which I hope are not super controversial, some of which is responding to feedback. Before I ask our members who did send in written comments to kind of explicate anything. So I'll go through the changes that I'm proposing. And then if there's stuff that is unaddressed that you still want to bring forward from your comments, then I'll have some time available for that. So that's where I'm at right now. And I do have my window open again. PPM stuff, rulemaking, rack membership. Okay. So I'm going to do, I think I'll dispense with the roll call and introduction simply because like we're not operating by Robert's rules. We all know who each other are at this point, and like I think the meeting attendance functions as a roll call well enough. So I'm going to save a bit of time and not go through the sort of formal calling out names, and kind of dive into the rule changes. So I only sent out one draft because I think the changes are simple enough this time that it's easy enough to and that I'm mostly looking at stuff that is proposed changes from the previous draft. So if I want to start out, I would like to look at transparency stuff first. So that is at lines 89 on page 4. So to talk about this idea of this looks like it's a previous draft, Karen. Did I attach the wrong one? I might have attached the wrong one.
Maybe.
This matches the one that I can receive.
This one. Yeah, this is one I want to look at.
Okay, the one I've got up right now.
I'm not hearing you, Karen, unfortunately.
She said the one that she has up now. I can hear her.
Do you want the file that says 2010 draft?
Okay.
Can you interpret that, Sophie?
No. Can you hear me, Numi? You
Numi,
might
can
have-
you hear
Oh
Sophia?
no, now I can't
Are
hear
you
anybody.
hearing your fellow
Uh,
people? Because we can hear them, and you guys can't hear each other. But apparently,
Oh, no.
We can hear
Hang on,
everybody.
Is it the one that's attached to the email, like the 12/10/2024 draft? Is that what you're?
I don't know that Numi can hear any of us.
Numi, can
Oh,
you hear
no.
anybody?
Numi, blink 3 times. No, I'm just kidding. Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Oh, no. Okay.
The good thing is we can empathize, right? I remember one of the last times I worked in the pharmacy and the power went out, and I was like, oh my God, we can't do anything.
This feels like a really bad game of telephone. If nobody can hear
Yeah.
any, well,
Yeah.
they all can not hear each other.
It's so funny that we can hear each other, but they can't hear each other. I just think that's so strange.
Yeah.
It really must be their servers. Yeah.
It's
That's
gotta
bizarre.
Oh, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the server will not go out again.
Wait, Sophia, can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, I
this
can
is-
hear you fine,
this
but I'm
is
working from
very
home.
strange.
So.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Oh, so it's the office.
I'm on the server in a different manner.
So it really is the legislature's fault. The adjacent to the DFR.
Okay, can folks hear me here?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Hopefully you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good.
I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, everything is cursed. Like, yeah, I was like 1 minute, 30 seconds away from being like, the technology has defeated me. I'm just gonna like explain my changes by email, and then you can tell me what you think in the thread, because like I'm running out of time to get this done this year. Anyway, so I did want to talk about. So this is the draft that I wanted to look at, and if I sent the wrong one out earlier, did I send the wrong one out earlier? No, I did. This is the one I
This
sent
is the
out.
one you sent.
Okay.
We had this one and a different red line one.
Really?
That's fairly old.
Oh, the other one is was Lugina's comments, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's true. That's the one.
I was
Right.
confused.
Okay. I was
Hey,
confused.
Numi, sorry. Are you going to be sending out a complete red line when you're done?
Yeah, I mean, I can do that. I can send like the sort of final red line relative to our sort of starting point, if that would be helpful.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll plan to do that.
Many
okay.
thank you.
So nobody sent me any suggested definitions for pay for performance unless I missed their email. So I took my own stab at drafting something. And this is what I put together. And like before I kind of dive into the text, like I kind of want to explain my thinking first, because pay for performance means different things in different contexts. Like Amy had very helpfully pointed out to look at the CCO contracts, because that's something that's used in that arena and is used in the Oregon Medicaid, Oregon Health Plan context. But I think that maybe what was being talked about in the statute here is not necessarily the same thing. And that is because, like, you look at the sort of CCO side. So what that's usually referring to is incentive payments, which are given to the CCOs by the state for meeting certain performance measures. And that's what's called pay for performance over there. In the pharmacy context, I think what the statute drafter was trying to get at here was pay for performance contracts between a PBM and a pharmacy, whereby the PBM would be withholding money from a pharmacy under contract based on their failure to meet certain performance metrics. You didn't fill so many prescriptions within a time. And so and also trying to square sort of question of thinking about talking about something that's expressed as revenue. And maybe it's something where I shouldn't be trying to capture both sides of this, because like it's not phrased well in the law. And I could just kind of only look at it from the sort of payer to PBM context. And just say like, hey, if you want to get at this perceived problem and get reporting on sort of pharmacies being under a pay for performance contract of some form, however that's described, and where you want a different transparency metric to pull that out. But what I've done is tried to do both for now, and I would be open to discussion on kind of how to handle this. So what I've proposed here, say, for the purpose of this rule, revenue received by a pharmacy benefit manager through pay for performance arrangements or similar means should include, and so the first half here, should include payments made to a pharmacy benefit manager for meeting specified performance metrics in a contract with an insurer or coordinated care organization, or the payers subject to the law. And then the second clause being, as well as any revenue that can be attributed to payments withheld from pharmacies as a result of their failure to meet contractually specified performance metrics. That I feel less good about in terms of including, because like I feel like it's not necessarily kind of fully quantifying what I'm trying to get at. And like, I haven't spent enough time in the weeds of PBM to pharmacy contracts to kind of know what the drafter was really trying to get at here. So like my ideas, oh, and if we could maybe scroll down to 124, the other proposed change that I have here is that I split out the sort of pay for performance or similar means from what was previously sub G, revenue received by a pharmacy benefit manager through spread pricing, because I don't think those are the same thing in any meaningful way. The way the statute has is it has them written as a list of things. And I apologize, I didn't get enough sleep this week, so I'm a little loopier than normal. So the and this is certainly within, you know, our ability to kind of do within the rule, because it's like, okay, so the statute gives us this list of things. We could put it in one clause, we could put it in multiple clauses. This is more about setting expectations for the program team that Sophie's going to be dealing with in terms of dealing with things. So it made sense to me to kind of bring this out, because okay, we think we know what spread pricing is at this point. We think that's a number that's reportable. We think maybe we know what pay for performance means, at least in the context of, say, a CCO to a PBM contract, where there's incentive payments for meeting certain metrics. And then similar means is kind of out there. Like, I think it gives us some flexibility to define additional terms and add more letters down below H in the future if we wanted to, if that was without passing another law, if that was something that came up in the transparency work. But right now, like, I can't even effectively define pay for performance, so I'm not particularly inclined to try and define anything else in this list. So if we go back up to my terrible definition that I have presented for you all to shoot up as a straw man, I would propose basically sort of three different options. One of which is that I just bin all of these changes, just leave it as it was in my last version, and just where it's like, okay, just report to us revenue from spread pricing, pay for performance, or similar means, and we'll have that one bucket of information, and we're not going to try and define this. Another option would be to use this definition or something similar to it in the final rule. And a third option would be to kind of cut off the second half. So trying to capture what does pay for revenue from pay for performance in a PBM to pharmacy context mean, and just leave it as like, okay, we'll just report to us incentive payments from payers to PBMs. So those are kind of the range of possibilities that I'm imagining right now. It's not to say that's the only thing that I could necessarily do, but that's where my mind is at. Thoughts? Regina?
Sorry, Amy, really quick. Can you just repeat the three options you said? Leave it as it was written before. The second option was this language or something similar to it. And what was the third option?
Basically cut out the last clause of this definition. So it's just, so it would be, should include any payments made to a pharmacy benefit manager for meeting specified performance metrics in a contract with an insurer or coordinated care organization. So yeah, from where the cursor is right now, it would be to delete that last chunk. Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize. I did look up in the I pulled a contract and looked, and they don't actually define it specifically. They have it in context. I thought you did a pretty good job interpreting it. I don't know that it's really well defined even within the CCO space. The kind of the interpretation of the contract meaning is that it does kind of have a Venn diagram overlap with spread pricing and the idea of pass through versus not pass through as far as the tracing the payment, what's paid to the pharmacy is that's what's paid to the PBM, and there's no difference within that with the payer. So I think that this actually is a pretty good stab at trying, because performance metrics could definitely be, part of pay for performance. So yay and sorry.
No, I mean, not your fault. Like, if it's certainly like I was struggling with this one. So yeah, Regina, go ahead.
Thank you, Amy. I wanted to talk about the dispensing fee definition, which is number 5, which is right above this, but then also number 6. Do you want me to start with 6 since we're kind of in that mindset?
Yeah, that would be helpful for me.
So I agree with you. It was in reading this definition, it was a little confusing because you're putting like two concepts together. One of like what a PBM is paid for, it is paid by a client or an insurer, and then the revenue that might come from pharmacies. And I struggled. I went back to the actual legislation because I was like, how is this grouped together? How is it, to try and see if I could get a better understanding of what the intent was. So it says revenue retain monies through spread pricing, pay for performance, and similar means. So when I read that, and I'll ask the pharmacist to check me on this, but spread pricing, pay for performance, to the way that those were grouped together, I was interpreting that to be money or revenue that a PBM could recognize from how pharmacies are paid and how versus how clients are billed. So I actually thought the second part of the sentence, which talks about the revenue that's withheld from pharmacies, I thought that section correlated more with spread pricing than the first part. And the other thing that kind of threw me off with the first part is that if you look at E and F, which currently exists, E and F, we have to report our administrative fees that we get from the carriers. And then we also have to report like what percentage of those fees that we get from the carriers we retain as revenue. So to me, that seems like that might be overlapping with the second or with the first portion of this definition. So that's just kind of, again, it was just, in an hour or so that we had to look at this. That was kind of a confusing thing for me. So if we keep the second part of the sentence, the one suggestion that I had was, instead of using withhold, if we could use clawback, because withheld could mean that, like, if you have a performance-based contract, we withhold it because you didn't meet your performance metrics. That's one thing. But like when you actually claw it back, when you take money back, I thought that's really what the pharmacists were trying to get at. But again, I wanted to, share this thought process with the pharmacists and see if this is anywhere near what they were thinking, or if I'm totally off base.
Well, I mean, if it's a clawback thing, then I feel like that would be coming into conflict with the other statutory provisions that we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
like, at least in theory, that shouldn't be happening in Oregon in the first place, which is maybe one of the things that was getting my brain tied in a knot in terms of thinking about, well, what does pay for performance actually mean in Oregon, assuming that, everybody's implementing contracts that are in compliance with 2725 and with 2185 and kind of these like no retroactive reduction terms and things like that. So like, then like the only thing that I could imagine in that point is like, well, okay, so you're supposed to meet certain metrics, and if you're not meeting them, then we'll pay you less. And then the only way that you can actually do that is to not make a payment you would have otherwise. That's where it kind of falls in my head. But yeah, anyway. John, did you have something to throw in?
Yeah, thank you, Numi. I guess as a pharmacist and payments come into me for prescriptions, I'm not sure that it matters to me whether it's clawed back or withheld prior to the point of sale. I would like to kind of know those things, and I think they should be aggregated information that the legislators and others should know how it's withheld. If there's an agreed upon reimbursement rate for a pharmacy and it's not met or it's not paid, no matter what the reason, I think it should be reported, in my opinion. I understand Regina's comments. I agree with Amy's. I think this is a good first effort. If we're trying to get to spread pricing, the more information, the better. I know it may be a little ambiguous and it can stand for refinement possibly in the future, but based on how it goes as far as reporting, but I think the more information, the better at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
John,
Austin,
thanks.
go ahead.
John, I just want to make sure you know that spread pricing is its own line still. Like, this isn't meant to replace spread.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, just because I thought that too. I was like, where'd spread go? And that's what Numi was saying. G is now spread, and then Numi separated H to be the pay for performance. Where in the bill in 4149, they're all aggregated together. The spread, pay for performance. And again, that's why I thought when we were talking about pay for performance, we were talking about some of those like quality-based networks that PBMs and pharmacies have. And that's what was throwing me off with the first part of the definition, because it was talking about payments between the PBM and the carrier, which do happen and are reported under E and F. So yeah, so I just want to make sure you know spread pricing is its own thing. It's still there, and that we aren't. That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Austin?
Two brief comments. A clawback is something completely different. So like a pay for performance, the pharmacy just wouldn't be paid. They would, instead of getting 100% of what you're owed, you're only getting like 80%. So it's not really a clawback in this payment scheme. So to me, withheld makes more sense. But then also they should absolutely report the amount of money that's withheld, because PBMs administrate this whole process. We're not involved in it. So since they're the keepers of, how much we're getting paid and all of this, all of this is about transparency. So we're not trying to like manipulate some situation. We're just trying to say, hey, report what's going on. So I don't know. I think it absolutely should be included as far as reporting that.
Yeah, and Austin, and again, I'm not saying that we don't want to report that. I just for the purposes of pay for performance, I just felt like what the intent of 4149 was spread and pay for performance, which is that second half of the language that Numi came up with, which is fine. Because I think the first half where it talks about the payment that we get from the insurers or CCOs, that's covered in its own line items in E and F.
Yeah. No. I was just pulling up the definition of spread pricing that was added which is like, I think added in the bill, which is, I think, is relatively narrow. Difference between the amount an insurer pays a pharmacy benefit manager and the amount the pharmacy benefit manager reimburses a pharmacy. Like, I mean, theoretically, yeah, okay, like a pay for performance contract could end up being something that generates spread in that way. If it is like, okay, we're reducing your payment relative to what was received because I'm struggling to come up with examples right now through performance metrics, but
yeah, and I'm trying to think of how the template's going to look when we have them fill it out.
Yeah.
To say, here's list all the money you received from these various sources. Now tell us how much of it was retained and how much of it went back to a pharmacy. That kind of thing. And then whether it was because of these different circumstances. So trying to regulate and explain to people what information to provide. That might be the format we end up if we have these words to go by.
Okay. John, did you have another thought, or is that a residual?
Yeah, I was just thinking about pay for performance, and I don't know if this is an example of it, but it's in my opinion, an example of absurdity that comes back from us from PBMs. And it's just this one particular PBM that prohibits bulk purchasing. Well, and it comes back as a message back on prescriptions that are paid. This particular PBM, and I won't mention the name, prohibits bulk purchasing. And I guess if they rule it as bulk purchasing, they could reverse that claim, I suppose. Is that a type of pay for performance metric? It's entirely frustrating when we buy a bottle of 100 and we bought it, once in 90 days, and they consider that bulk purchasing. I don't know what trips that message to us, but it's very frustrating. And I guess technically in an audit, since it's in my contract, there it goes. So anyway, that's just my thought.
John, thanks for that, sharing that info. I guess I always interpreted it as like performance-based contracts with pharmacies where, I think it's like, based on your generic dispensing rate or discussion of an HMG with a patient with diabetes or something like that. That was what I was thinking versus an audit. Because this is what this is having to do with is the revenue reporting that PBMs are making to the state. We're already doing it, but this is expanding it. So, and again, I thought this was all about the performance-based contracts that pharmacies had. So that's what's throwing me off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so kind of what I'm thinking right now, to think out loud, is to say that what we would be trying to capture here, if we're collecting spread pricing as defined in statute, that spread pricing figure is going to include the difference in payments that would be generated by a pay for performance agreement. Because the way that a pay for performance agreement in Oregon is going to be structured, it's going to be structured as a reduction in the sort of initial payment, or as I've stated here, withholding. So rather than splitting things out, what I'm inclined to do is to change what's right now sub 3 of this rule. So the definition of spread pricing by so that I would delete this new sub 6 that I've created, and I would just say, for the purpose of this rule, spread pricing, pay for performance, or similar means as the meaning given to spread pricing in the statute. Under the presumption that, okay, whatever the legislature was looking for here is going to be within that number as a total, as an aggregate total. And that trying to kind of dial down and split things out, we don't have enough information ultimately to know if there's more specificity that was wanted there. And so I would delete this definition. I'd kind of say, well, okay, all we're looking for in terms of that figure. And the reason that I want to do that is because okay, we've been directed to collect from PBMs all revenue received from spread pricing, pay for performance, or similar means. And like, I don't want to be put in a position where we're not collecting some of the information we're required to collect. Does that make sense to folks? And so by just saying, well, okay, we're looking at spread pricing, we've got this definition of spread pricing. After chewing things over today, I think there's a general consensus that that figure is going to include what people are describing as pay for performance in conversations about pharmacy, and that's good enough for now. Not to say that we'll never split those hairs a little bit in the future, because I think the statute gives us some flexibility to start collecting information for those data elements in a more granular way. But like right now, I don't feel inclined to do so. Does anybody have a tremendous amount of heartburn about that proposal? I see some nodding heads and some slightly grim, but generally conciliatory, agreeing expressions. Sophie, go ahead.
Yeah, based on that explanation in trying to, regulate and have people do reporting, like I said, tell us the money you got in, tell us the money you sent out to the pharmacies. And the difference is going to be one of these types of things. But if I don't have something that tells me where I can say how much of it is due to spread pricing, how much of it is due to this pay for performance or things like that, I mean, I don't know if that would still make sense with given the changes that you talked about, to say why some of that amount is being retained for this reason and some of it's being retained for this reason. Do you think we could still go there with what you were just proposing?
I mean, I think we could go there in the future. I don't think we have a good enough basis to kind of say this is spread pricing, this is pay for performance right now.
So, but at least we would have the amount that they're keeping, that PBMs are keeping.
Yeah, exactly.
Through these relationships,
exactly.
And money transfers. Okay.
That we would be getting the sort of lump sum that I think the advocates have been interested in. And like maybe it doesn't kind of break things out in a way where we can do more detailed analysis, but I don't think that the sort of nature of the arrangements has been defined in a clear enough manner that we can really do better than that at the moment. Like we've been directed to collect all of this information, and I don't want to put us in a situation where we're not collecting some of the information that we're required to. But we're also, so that's
okay. And that makes sense. And then some who have a different arrangement where maybe the PBM isn't paying the pharmacy directly and some other third party is, or whatever the case may be, they're still going to be getting money through some sort of administrative fee, because they have to get money somehow, because they would be out of business if they weren't. So
yes, because and like I do take Legina's point that like as I've proposed the definition right now, this is going to be duplicative of some of the data that's already being reported in the other data elements, which I also don't want to do, because
I know it's hard to break it out.
Data. So okay.
Our instructions might get really wordy. Include money here that wasn't already included up there.
Yeah. No, it's like, hey, like I'm not saying like in 5 years when we're doing our 5-year review of this rulemaking, like maybe you'll come around and say, oh, well, I had this very specific conversation about this type of contract with pharmacies, and I'd like to collect data on that specifically. And then that could be something we could split it out on the basis of the statutory authority. But right now we're not there. And as far as trying to create something implementable, like money in from insurance companies for claims versus money out to pharmacies for claims, is something we can actually quantify in an effective.
I think that'll be good for DPT right now, because like you said, as the licensing and audits of PBMs progresses, they'll get more information about what might be good for DPT to collect for transparency. That'd be great.
Yep. Okay.
Anyway, that was just me, so I'll let RAC members actually speak.
Numi, if it's okay, can we talk about dispensing fee definition, which is on the same page?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Unless I just wanted to remind you that I wanted to just chat about that.
Mhm.
So the concern that I have here, first of all, I know that you had asked for a dispensing fee and we all kind of grappled with it. The concern that I have here, and I want to make sure the pharmacists are can check me here. The concern I have here is it says means any payment for services associated with et cetera, et cetera. I'm wondering if we should simplify this even more and say a fee paid to a pharmacist for dispensing a medication, period. And here, let me tell you why. Right now it says any payment for services associated with, and I'm thinking of vaccines because there are pharmacies get payment for the drug, the actual vaccine drug. But then they also get a fee for administering a vaccine, and that's independent of their dispensing of it. And so that any payment for services just concerned me a little bit. And I just wanted to, and again, it wasn't until I saw this definition that I was like, oh wait, what about vaccines? So again, so here's the ask. Should we simplify it to say dispensing fee means a fee paid to a pharmacist for dispensing a medication, period?
I hear what you're saying. I think the thing that I'm grappling with is that the statute directed us to collect dispensing fees paid to pharmacies and dispensing fees paid to PBMs, which, we've talked about this. Like, it doesn't make a ton of sense.
Numi,
yeah.
if I could just,
Yes.
we don't pay PBMs a dispensing fee. We pay pharmacies. So like Express Scripts is a PBM, it has a PBM component and then the pharmacy component. So it would still include what we're paying, like the Express Scripts pharmacy. I just want to clarify that. Like we're not paying a PBM a dispensing fee.
Yeah.
I mean,
no,
they're under the same umbrella, but we're not, I mean, like, so I'm just saying the way Lugina's phrasing it would still include a payment made to a pharmacy that is under the same umbrella as a PBM.
Yeah.
So I just want, and I like Lugina's clear and straightforward definition. I would prefer that. I think it's clear for regulating purposes, and I think it's clear for purposes of these rules. So.
Yeah, because Numi, you still have C and D down below at the bottom of this page, still has it broken out like dispensing fees to a PBM and then dispensing fees to pharmacies. So there's still two reporting lines.
Yeah.
And that will still happen. It's just clarifying dispensing it's having to do with dispensing a drug. That's it.
Yeah. Wait, and we've kind of been around this particular circle track a few times already, which is to say, like, I kind of suspect we're gonna get zero in a lot of reports for dispensing fees paid to a PBM, as it's stated.
Yeah, I don't know who originates the fee, whether it's something the insurer pays to the PBM to pass along, or is it, I don't know, maybe it's not singled out.
Okay.
And the PBM receives the money because I'm sure they're not just paying it out of their pocket.
Yeah. I did see Ralph pop up for a second. Did you have something to?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Numi. Ralph Magrish, if you could just go back to the point in the area where Lugina commented, because I think she may have a point that I'd like to probably call on and see if John Murray had thoughts on as the community pharmacist on the committee, if in fact that could, as that language was written to me, if you can go back to it, that I suppose that could, as written, potentially include payment or reimbursement for things like medication therapy management or MTM, John. So I'd be curious if you were in agreement with Lugina as to her point or perspective on whether that maybe would be better with a simple definition. Thank you.
Is that you're talking about the dispensing fee definition, right? On 5?
Yes.
It's right there, line
Right here.
86 through 88.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. And John would be curious about your thoughts there.
Yeah, I understand what Legina was saying, and might be better to have it more simplistic. The administration fee, for example, on Legina's vaccine example, does come in as a total. It comes in as one payment for that vaccine. COVID vaccine has ingredient cost, and an administrative fee that isn't necessary. Yeah, and a fee to administer it. It's not necessarily a dispensing fee. So it would catch that more totally, the reimbursement for that claim, for example. So.
Okay. That's helpful to know. I have hands from Austin and then Maris.
And I can't remember if Lugini used the word medication or prescription, but I would want it to be prescription, not medication, because we do dispense prescriptions that are not medications, such as blood sugar test strips. That's not a medication, but it is a prescription product. So I think using the word prescription would be all inclusive.
Yeah, good catch. Good thought. I did say medication, and you're right.
I would agree with that as well. Prescription's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree as well. You want to make sure you catch the DME.
Super.
Can somebody put this in writing in the chat so that we've?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I can.
Maris, did you have something to throw in?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to add that this is something our internal folks that we grappled with too in terms of the definition and wanting it to be narrowly tailored to represent dispensing fees, but also recognizing like what it is intended to get at. And yeah, I would also support that narrow definition, so that it is not so broad as to include things that would be inappropriately included, and also not to include redundant reporting. I think that's also a concern of ours, that the dispensing fee definition is narrowly tailored to include prescriptions and also not to require additional and redundant reporting. That's
okay. Right. Let's see here.
I put that definition in the chat.
Thank you.
And I did put prescription based on Austin's recommendation.
Okay.
So is this the total amount of money paid to the pharmacy for dispensing a drug?
No, it's only the dispensing fee.
Okay, so my read of this is that they're looking for information about how much money got paid to the PBM to dispense a drug, and then how much of that money went to the pharmacy.
No, that would be spread. Dispensing fee is the fee that you're paid to dispense a prescription versus a medicine. So it would be like the PBMs that own pharmacies, whether they be, usually mail order and specialty pharmacies is what we're talking about, although one of them has a retail footprint. But it would be fees paid to those pharmacies that are owned by the PBMs.
If we had in there, because for contracting purposes, for example, contracts that I have, a dispensing fee is a very defined thing. And so, I mean, it's a portion of the reimbursement formula that comes to me, as well as cost, percentage of drug cost, that sort of thing. So as long as our definition doesn't preclude the rest of my reimbursement formula, I don't mean to throw a wrench in anything, and maybe I'm off base. Maybe any payment for services associated covers that. Yeah, thank you. Is in addition. Okay. I was
just thinking, there's this language as well that might help if address what you're talking about, John. This fee is paid in addition to reimbursement for the cost of the drug, so that like there's two elements, and this is just this one little piece of it, not the big total reimbursement. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but I think that's what you were saying.
Okay. Amy, you wanna?
Yeah, just really quickly, is it possible to maybe have this as a definition? Just so that everyone's clear, like within this, put it in as a definition. Because I would agree. I think we have a little bit of a conversation here, like a disagreement on what it means. And my reading on this would be that it's the payment to the pharmacy, the pharmacist, for dispensing the drug, and it's separate for the reimbursement of the drug itself. Like they would be, as John said, part of the overall formula for the payment for that transaction.
A fee paid to a pharmacist for dispensing. A fee for professional services paid to a pharmacist for? No.
Just professional services will get the vaccine administration back in.
Yeah, that could be entirely separate. Like, so you could have a dispensing fee to dispense the vaccine, and then an administrative fee, which would be the professional fee service that should be billed for the pharmacist providing the vaccine. It's a complicated thing, but
Yeah.
I mean, dispensing fee to me means that that's the fee that's paid on top of the reimbursed, the contractual reimbursement rate for the medication, or the whatever the agent is that's being dispensed for the dispensing. It's an additional fee that should be paid for the work of dispensing.
Mm-hmm. A fee paid to a pharmacist for dispensing a prescription in addition to reimbursement for the cost of a drug is what, so that's what Gina had proposed.
I would agree with that as a definition. Yeah.
Okay. The drug. Okay. Okay. I didn't plan to get quite so wrapped around the axle about this, but okay. Any other thoughts on the transparency rule? Okay. Let's talk about market conduct, and I want to start with something that I didn't change, actually. And what the heck happened to my window? I want to look at.
What's the room number?
Yeah, 4-4.
Was that? Okay, here we go.
Yeah, this one, and I want to look at also. Like the relevant text is at 166 through 168, and the other part is way, way down. It's the mail order stuff. Where the hell is that?
196.
Yeah, yes, 196. Yes, 7. Did I mention I didn't get very much sleep? Anyway, so we had some discussion about this last time, and I had some internal deliberations as well as consulted with counsel. And what I've decided to do is not change from my previous draft, because our interpretation of the statute is that the specialty pharmacy language does not operate as an exception to the mail order language. So like we don't interpret the statute as saying that you can require the use of a mail order pharmacy for a specialty drug. We read the statute as saying you cannot require the use of a mail order pharmacy as a condition of reimbursement. You can require a specialty pharmacy, but you can't require a mail order specialty pharmacy, for example. From an operative standpoint in most of Oregon, there probably isn't a brick and mortar specialty pharmacy available to the population. But as kind of I described previously, like view this as saying basically, well, you know, if you have a brick and mortar specialty pharmacy in network somewhere in Oregon, you're good for compliance purposes from my perspective. Which is to say, like, you know, if you're dealing with a specialty drug, if there's not somebody who's certified as a specialty pharmacy, there's all the language about what is a specialty pharmacy for the purposes of these rules that we negotiated 4 years ago. Then, okay, but like right now we're sticking with the way that I've interpreted it, which is to say that they're separate requirements, they're separate legal requirements, and that the specialty pharmacy language does not operate as an exception to the mail order language that was created in 2185. So I have not changed that. Thoughts? Regina?
I just need to process it. I mean, I guess I just want to make sure if we have a if what if there's not a specialty pharmacy brick and mortar in Oregon?
You know, then maybe that's a thing where you know, I can see that being a potential situation because of the difficulties. Like I think there's probably something that qualifies somewhere, but I mean, we can't require the usage of something that doesn't exist. So if every brick and mortar specialty pharmacy in Oregon closed, you know, it's like, okay, you can't require mail order, but the reason that the patient can't access a brick and mortar is not because of the network or the insurance requirement. It's because there isn't a specialty pharmacy available. So, yeah. Maris and then John.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for that, Numi. Just to make sure that I clarify that point. So what you're saying then is that if, say, like a member's specialty drug is only accessible via a specialty mail order pharmacy, that is okay. But the required use of a mail order pharmacy when there is an alternative that is brick and mortar. Okay, that is a helpful clarification. Okay, thank you.
Because you might have a patient who, if there is an in-network specialty pharmacy in Oregon that dispenses the drug in question, like okay, you can't say no, you absolutely have to use mail order.
But if their prescription specialty drug is only available through that mail order pharmacy, then it is okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Then it's like you can't require mail order as a condition of reimbursement, but it's not your fault that there isn't a brick and mortar pharmacy that patient can access the particular drug through.
Okay. Thank you.
John, go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, I do appreciate the thoughts that have been expressed, and I don't want to preclude any pharmacy brick and mortar in the state of Oregon that, you know, goes to the trouble of credentialing themselves to be a specialty pharmacy. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and like I recognize, you know, that part of the issue may be that certain drug companies are only issuing particular drugs to very, very specific business pharmacy operations. So again, it's not the PBM's fault. Anyway, Madonna, go ahead.
Sure. So I was just going to also echo thank you, because we as a specialty group have to get our drugs through specialty pharmacy. We don't have an option. And we have a brick and mortar. We get ours from OHSU. So I appreciate that we aren't forced into the mail-in pharmacy. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. I'm just trying to enforce the law the way it's written, honestly. Okay. I did make a few changes in this one. I think one that I want to recognize first is down at the bottom, 266 through 268. This is language that was suggested by both Maris and by Lugina, which is, so this is adding a clause referring back to the to sub 9 and 11, which are the various sort of clawback prohibitions. So it's the clawback thing, and it's the retaliation language, and it's saying this is not to be construed in a way that limits your ability to do a pharmacy audit. Karen, it's all the way down at the end of the document.
Thank you. Within this rule.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a long rule.
Yeah. Here we go.
The lengths that I will go to not create a new rule title. Yeah, so 266 to 268. I did add a little bit to it in terms of, I don't remember precisely what you had proposed, but this is kind of merging a little bit of the language that you proposed with something that I've added, which is to say, we're not going to interpret this in a way that says you can't do audits that are in compliance with the audit statute. Anyone have problems with this? If you think of problems with it later, send me a email with a bunch of exclamation points in it. But otherwise, okay. Wow. I think that's consensus. Let's go ahead and go up to the other change I made, which we were looking at previously. It's on page 7, lines 201 through 206. I think, again, both Maris and Legina had sent some suggestions on this and kind of, I think, the concern. So this is the language that is, so I wasn't exactly following what y'all proposed, because kind of, so this is kind of what we're talking about in terms of what you're supposed to do if you deny an appeal. And we talked about this, which is to say, okay, you provide an NDC, that's in the statute. Austin had suggested at the first meeting, it's like, well, you should provide an NDC and a national or regional wholesaler. I added some language to that. I don't think this really changes the meaning of what I proposed last time, but I've kind of resorted it, and I've added this last clause here, which specifies a time. So kind of what I have proposed is, if you deny an appeal for MAC, you give the pharmacy an NDC, so National Drug Code for the drug, that is generally available for purchase by a similarly situated pharmacy, and identify a national or regional wholesaler where that national drug code was listed at a price equal to or less than the maximum allowable cost of the drug at the time the pharmacy benefit manager most recently updated its maximum allowable cost list. The concern that was raised in the comment letters was you don't want to be held accountable for information that you can't have. My understanding of how MAC lists are calculated is that it is based on wholesaler listings, and that in addition to that, the statute is expecting you to, if there's changes in market dynamics that cause a significant change of price, you're supposed to update that within 7 days. So to be compliant with the statute as it's currently written, that implies that the pharmacy benefit manager needs to be paying attention to what wholesalers are charging for a drug at any given time. So like, I don't think this is information that you don't have, because I've identified the time. And so it should be to say, basically, you updated your MAC list within the last 7 days, or whenever it was for that particular drug, if there hasn't been a change for a while. You should be able to point to a wholesaler that is operating in Oregon that had the drug at or below that price, because MAC is usually an average of wholesale prices. I would expect there to be an identifiable wholesaler who had a price less than the MAC price, because it's an average. So there should be some that's above, some that's below. So I don't think this is unreasonable. This is trying to kind of fit in with what Austin was describing. It's like, an NDC doesn't do me any good if I don't know where that actually is listed. And I recognize this is more of a reordering and less of a revision, in line with what you requested, but I think is trying to clarify, this is the information, this is the time frame, this is what we're looking for here in terms of being able to identify actionable information for a pharmacy that has had their MAC appeal denied. Thoughts? Gina?
Ta-da! So,
I'm shocked.
I know, I'm sorry. honestly, I was happy. I was like, there's only 2 sections of this rule that I was like, hey, I have some feedback. Okay, so here's the issue on line 204 where it says that it says a national regional wholesaler where the NDC was listed. So I just want to, here's what I want to point out. In Oregon statute 735-534, that has to do with MAC in general. And one of the requirements is that we as PBMs have to make available to each pharmacy the specific industry sources other than proprietary sources that we use to determine MAC. And so on our general website, on our MAC appeals website, in our provider manual, we have, we say like, we're getting this data from Amerisource, you know, we list different wholesalers, but the problem that we have is that I don't know, like I may know that Cardinal has this drug at a price, you know, at a certain, you know, they've told us they're selling it at a certain price, but I don't know that Austin's pharmacy on Main Street can get it at that price. So that's really where I'm concerned. Like, we're already providing the sources of where we're getting this data, but we don't have visibility to not only to know, and Austin, I'm not picking on you for any reason, but just because you're an example, a pharmacist. But I don't know what Austin's contract is with, say, if he is, Cardinal is his primary wholesaler. I don't know what his contract is. I don't know what his pricing is. I don't have visibility to that. And so that's what I really want to make sure. Like, we can say we're getting this data from all of these wholesalers and we do have to provide those sources, but I don't have the specificity to say you, Austin, can go to Cardinal because I don't know that A, you're contracted with Cardinal. I don't know what your rates are. So the ask that we had was to say we would provide the NDC for the drug that's generally available for purchase by similarly situated pharmacies at a price equal or less to MAC. So it would take out the national regional wholesaler was listed at the time of the MAC. And again, it's because we don't know that information, but at the same time, we are already providing pharmacists information on what sources we're using to calculate and come up with a MAC.
I like the language that's in there that you have proposed. The intent of this is to provide a check on how MACs are calculated, in my opinion, and what we're seeing on the ground with MACs being applied that we have no ability to get close to. And so I think the only way to demonstrate that is we have to submit our invoices, so we can do that. But then where's the proof that the MAC is correct? Where's the proof that it wasn't arbitrarily set, for example, on a new generic? That's my concern. I like the language that you have in it. And so I think it provides a level of information that has to be supplied that has some objectivity.
Other thoughts? Austin?
So again, I'll come back to the point of all this is transparency. I agree that Lugina, that Prime doesn't know what our purchase is. However, they are the ones, not just them in particular, all PBMs are the ones that are setting the MAC list. So it is reasonable. It is a reasonable request to tell me, where are you getting that number from? You know, if you're only going to pay me 90 cents to dispense a prescription to somebody, I'd like to know where you got the idea that that should only cost me 90 cents to procure it, to get the dispense fee, to put it in the bottle, to use my professional judgment to decide whether this is going to kill the person or help them, and only getting paid 90 cents. Respectfully, if they're going to be the ones that are creating the whole MAC list scheme, they should absolutely have to report. And that's what all this is about, is just about transparency. So the point is transparency, and I appreciate that Lugina said Prime is a transparent PBM, and so I appreciate that this is something that they should all be you know, required to comply with, of providing very basic information on where we can procure that. Because if we're doing a bad job buying, you know, we need to fix it. I don't think that's the case, but that's, you know, it's about transparency.
Can I do a quick sound check? Is this coming through?
Yes.
It is. Okay, amazing. Cool. I think I figured out my problem earlier was I had muted my computer. Anyway, to avoid feedback with Karen's phone, so it's Karen's fault, clearly.
Oh, I do have it running.
Oops. Anyway, so where was I? So I hear everything you're saying, from both sides. Like I don't think this is requiring you to know what Austin's contract is. I think it's requiring you to know where something was listed, to pull something completely out of the air. You're filling a prescription for sertraline, and say the MAC is 90 cents. Austin had to purchase it for a particular patient at $1.10 per pill. Makes a MAC appeal, and what you can come back with is something that says, well, okay, this wholesaler had this listed, had sertraline listed at 30 cents, because that's one of the numbers that went into that average. That doesn't mean that Austin can buy it there, but like it does provide a source potentially where Austin could go and say, well, okay. And that's why we have the other provisions down below, which is that, that Austin can again go and say, this is not generally available for purchase because it's not available to me. That this is separate. This only requires you to provide the information. It doesn't require it to be actionable by Austin. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it is going to be something where there is kind of the opportunity for the pharmacy to rebut, to say, it's like, hey, I can't actually buy that because it would require me to buy 10,000 pills in order to actually get that price. So my inclination is that I'm pretty happy with this language right now, personally. But yeah. Keith, you have your hand up. You're actually going to be enforcing this program. Talk about it.
Hi there. I've got a question about line 206. At the time that the PBM most recently updated the MAC list, most recently is my question. So if the MAC lists are updated, I believe weekly, if I'm working a complaint that's 3 months old, what MAC list are we talking about?
Great point.
And I would propose that perhaps that should be something that is the MAC list at the time this was being dispensed, at the time of purchase.
It'd be a claim adjudication.
Yeah, at claim adjudication.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
One question. So where on line 204, it says, and a national or regional wholesaler where that code was listed. Could we say, and national or regional wholesalers plural? Because again, with mine, like we get data from Cardinal, Amerisource, and but then we also get NADAC, blah, blah, blah. So again, I think if we could say national or regional wholesalers plural, then I could list, here's where we're getting all this data. But again, when it says a national wholesaler, it makes me think that I have to be able to say to Austin, you can get this at Cardinal, versus what we do now, which is we get pricing data from multiple wholesalers, but we don't know what again, it just sucks because we can't see their data. So I don't know how to say Cardinal if he's not contracted with Cardinal or he can't get it at Cardinal, for example.
That's a great point. You're right. The MAC system is flawed. So it doesn't matter what I can purchase at. The point of it is for the PBM to say at which wholesaler, at what price it can be purchased. So there, it's just, I mean, the point is just to have a little bit of accountability that it's not an arbitrary number, that it is truly tied to a drug available somewhere. And I would advocate for it being required to say which wholesaler, because otherwise, if I won't point any fingers, but if I was a PBM, I might say you could buy atenolol for 3 cents a tablet at Cardinal, McKesson, and or ABC, AmerisourceBergen, Cencora. That's not helpful to me. Because then it's just too general. It's basically that's basically what we have now is a MAC list that doesn't tell me where I can buy it. So I think it would be helpful. Like that's the point of this, is to know from which wholesaler it's available for purchase at that price.
But even if you can't use that wholesaler for whatever reason?
I'll refer to my first comment that I totally agree that that's what's wrong with the MAC idea, is that, because different wholesalers have different schemes that they have for how they price things. Atenolol might be $3 at this wholesaler, but $2 at that wholesaler. But then sertraline might be $2 at this wholesaler, but $3 at that wholesaler. It's just the MAC system is not how pharmacy purchasing works. Pharmacy purchasing works by when you go to Cardinal, for instance, and you say, I'm going to bring you however many millions of dollars of business per year. What's the best price you can give me across the entire book of business of drugs? If I'm piecemealing and buying this drug from here and there and everywhere, I'm going to pay more money. Sure, I might save a little bit here, but then on the other 99% of drugs that I buy, it's going to be more expensive. So how pharmacy purchasing works is it's volume based. So the more volume I can bring to my wholesaler, the lower my entire purchasing becomes. So, and we are smart. We do have multiple wholesalers that we buy from, and we are strategic with how we buy so that it can be as low as possible. Pharmacies are one of the best purchasers, I would wager, in the entire nation. So any accusation that pharmacies do a bad job buying is false. You are right that if, like, I would be very frustrated if, somebody said, oh, you could buy it for 2 cents a tablet at Cencora, but I'm at Cardinal. Okay, that's the situation we have now. That, again, is the problem with the MAC deal, but that's just the situation that we're in.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I don't want to contribute further to, they're giving us information we can't use. I just want there to be some recognition of, I don't have that visibility. We can provide you, say, Cardinal, but if that's not your wholesaler, I just want to make sure we're okay with that.
The point is transparency. The point is to show that it's not an arbitrary number, that it's not just a random number that's thrown against the wall and see what sticks. It's tied to an actual source of truth. I think, I don't know, other pharmacists chime in. John, you have your hand?
Yeah, absolutely. I need specificity to, if I'm not buying right, well, if I get enough of these demonstrated to me, I will make a change. I don't think that's the case. I agree with Austin on the intelligence of our buying and the efforts that we put into it. And so when we see these numbers come across as a MAC price sent to us, I tend to wince a little bit and not believe them, honestly. So I guess I need evidence. I need to see where this buying is gone awry. I'd like to return also a little bit to the comment that was made earlier about timing of the comparable information. Most recently updated maximum allowable cost list. How can it be that the MAC list and the date of fill of the prescription can more closely align? Is that important? Is that something that we need to work out at this point or not?
Yeah. So I appreciate the robust discussion from everyone. Thank you for participating and giving your perspective. So it's I'm really happy with the groups that I pulled together here. So I think this has been very helpful for me in terms of thinking about some things that are tricky and fiddly and not super easy to land on. I think kind of what I'm inclined to do on this one is that I would add a clause to the end, which is specifying a time frame a little bit more. So something about the MAC list at the time of adjudication. So what the MAC list said at the time of adjudication. I'm not sure how I'm going to phrase that precisely, but that's kind of the general idea that I have framed in my head. And I'm going to do something with this national or regional wholesaler clause to kind of address Lugina's Lugina's comment, because like recognizing it's like, okay, you don't actually have access to the data, which is really annoying to me. However, it is a thing like recognizing, okay, so that's where the problem is ultimately, is like you don't have that visibility. So like having something that reflects, okay, this was calculated based on prices from these wholesalers. And I'm not sure how I'll phrase that quite, but I'll work on that. I had such grand dreams of finishing this meeting early, and then I spent 15 minutes fighting with technology. If
it helps, that's the last of my comments.
Okay. So one thing, because I have to do this, is there any member of the public who would like to give comment at this time who is not a RAC member? Please raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any. Thank you. So let's talk about next steps. So I am going to be putting together the materials to, I did also distribute a draft statement of need and fiscal impact, which does have some stuff in it. Generally, it says that PBMs are not small businesses. Some pharmacies are small businesses and may have some ancillary impacts, but like you're the intended beneficiaries of this whole thing. So yeah. So if you have a chance, read that over, let me know what you think. Sort of my plan, and I will also put this in an email because I know some people are having to drop out at this point because we have used our entire time. So where we're at, I'm going to file a temp rule for January 1. And so that filing, I'm going to be putting the materials together this week and next week. And that'll go out, and it will be basically the text that we discussed today. With the changes that we landed on by consensus for the previous things, and then kind of doing whatever I'm doing with that last paragraph we were talking about, with the sort of changes that I suggested in nature. Beyond that, I'm not planning to have another live meeting of this group because there is a legislative session coming up, and I don't have time to continue waffling on this. So what I'm going to propose doing is so we'll have the temp rule. It'll be basically what we discussed today. I'm going to circulate that text to this group, and we're going to have an email rack over the next 2 months where I'll figure out what a comment deadline is. If there's anything that seems particularly on fire that I need to actually change, then I'll do another round of draft, distribute a draft, ask for feedback on those changes. And if I have to do that 2 or 3 times, so be it. But I think we're close to landing this plane, at least with the information that we have available right now. So that is the operating plan. So no comment deadline this time, because I'm going to file the temp rule next week, come hell or high water. If you have, I will send around the language with the revisions that we discussed today, either tomorrow or whenever the special session ends, because I don't know when that's going to happen either. Get me comments back by January 1st if you have anything that you have thoughts on. Well, no, that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. Let's say, how about Friday, January 10th. So I'll distribute updated language. If you have any comments on that after I've made those changes, get me comments back by the 10th. That is feedback that will get integrated into the permanent rulemaking, along with any comments you have on the SNFI draft. And permanent rulemaking will be in the bulletin in March, probably, for a June 1 effective date. So that's the plan. Any comments, questions, final thoughts? Thank you all for your participation. This has been very helpful to me, if not my mental health necessarily.
Thanks, Numi.
Thank you, Numi.
All
Your
right.
work is incredible.
Thanks you all.
Holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Numi. Happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays.
Holidays. Thank you, Austin, John, and
Bye.
all the pharmacy folks.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny.